I don't think we normally connect love and law. I don't think we purposely separate them or anything, but it just seems like law, rules, commandments, those are things that we have to obey, we have to do, you know. But God, in the first reading, God's talking about putting His law in our hearts. And then He says, all will know me. Those aren't legal kinds of, that's not legal language, you know. To put something close to your heart or in your heart is something more than just obeying, you know. And Jesus Himself says, if you love me, you will keep my commands. Jesus Himself puts love and obeying, love and commands together, you know. And probably most preachers, most of the time, are encouraging people to obey God's commands, you know. And I do that too. But what I'd like to encourage you today is not so much just obey God's commands, but see obeying God's commands, see following the law of God, the law of the church, as a way of loving God. You know, I often tell children the following commandment, you know, honoring your father and mother, is partly about obeying them. And that word honor, again, we don't necessarily connect that with love, but I tell children, obeying your parents is one way of loving them, you know. And I think of priest relationship with their bishop. We promise those respect and obedience. We don't promise to love our bishop, I guess. But I find that to be the best way of loving the bishop is to show him respect and obedience, and somehow, and to see those as connected makes it a lot easier, you know. It's a lot harder to obey someone you don't like, you know, and it might possibly be close to impossible to obey someone you hate. I don't know. So think of those commands, whatever they are. May they be the simplest or the largest, you know, but not stealing, not lying, going to Mass on Sunday, you know, waiting until marriage for the conjugal act, not practicing artificial contraception, respecting people, you know, forgiving people, showing others mercy and patience. Whatever it is, especially those commands that are hardest for you to obey or to practice. I would encourage you, and this is what I do on the difficult ones. I say, Stef, this is a way of loving God. And it puts that commandment or law or whatever it is in a different context and makes it a lot easier to do. God says He'll put His law in our hearts. In a way, it's something that we have to do also, or at least eventually. Because what's the goal of the spiritual life? It's union with God. It's communion. And it's living a life of love and charity with God, but also with each other, you know. And so the sooner we see the commandments of God, the law of God, the commandments of the church in that context, the easier those will be and the more sense the spiritual life will make. And so I encourage you, not just to keep God's commands, to follow the laws of the church, but to see those as a way of loving God.